This podcast is brought to you by UConnect, the creator of the first all-in-one virtual career center. Scale your impact and engage more students with a platform that puts all of your career resources in one place.
I think it's so vital to the functioning of a career center on campus to be connected to alumni, their alumni associations. If they don't have that connection, I think that they disadvantage themselves to do things like a PlusFive program. And just as importantly, to engage alumni at things like career fairs and networking events and panels that you offer. And I think that what we do really well is we inform each other, let each other know what's coming up, what are some opportunities, where can we co-present, where can we cooperate in terms of offering programs. It's just such a learning experience. And again, because careers reach into the student experience and out to the alumni experience, that second piece needs to be there. I think I can't say enough about if you want to initiate some sort of a program, you've got to have those partners, and those partners live in the alumni association.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Career Everywhere podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Metzger, and today I am joined by James Tarbox and Theanne Thompson, both of Stanford University. James is the Assistant Vice Provost and Executive Director of Stanford Career Education, and Theanne is the Director of Alumni Career Connections and Interim Director of Student Programs. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith.
Yeah, I'm super glad to have you both. And I'm excited to talk to you today about the Stanford PlusFive program and how your respective teams in career education and the Alumni Association work together to support alumni with their career development for up to 5 years after graduation. So alumni career support, as we all know, is definitely top of mind for a lot of career leaders right now. But sometimes it's hard to know where to start or what resources, what you might need, what kind of time you need. So I am looking forward to digging into how you all do this there at Stanford and what you've learned. Before I get into my questions, though, is there anything else either of you would like to add about yourselves, your backgrounds, or your roles there at Stanford?
I have one thing to add. I've been watching your podcast. It's so fun, by the way, to see how people have responded to this question. And I want to go on record as saying I used my career center starting in my sophomore year. And I'm going to date myself when I say this. I met with a career counselor and she said to me, just read this book, which was called What Color is Your Parachute, and do the exercises. And there was this one exercise we had to create a flower, and it was all about your life. I created that flower on these big pieces of paper. I brought it back to the career center. And when she walked out to meet me, I said, so I finished. And she said, I've never had anyone do that.
Like finish the book?
She looked very shocked. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder what's going to come next. And after the shock kind of went away, we actually looked at, because I was interested in becoming a lawyer, 10 alumni that I could interview with to do info interviews. But I'll never forget the look on her face when I showed up and I had all of that stuff done. And she was just like, I'm not sure where we go next.
Oh, that's funny. It's called What Color is Your Parachute?
What Color is Your Parachute?
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
I read the same book, James. It must have been one of the popular books at the time. That's great. And Meredith, I'll just add quickly, I am an alum of Stanford. And when I think back about my career, I think every position I've gotten has been through a Stanford referral. So really excited just to talk with you about the power of the alumni network today.
Yeah, I love that. I have relied on alumni referrals from my alma mater, the University of Idaho. It was actually how I made my transition from the journalism industry into marketing. I reached out to a fellow Idaho Vandal who had made a similar transition. And I was like, hey, from one Vandal to another, I would like to move into marketing. What advice do you have? And she ended up getting me a job.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, I think we know those alumni career connections work for sure. All right. So before I get into my more specific questions about our topic today, I do want to kick us off with a question I ask all of our guests here on the podcast. And that's, what does career everywhere mean to you?
I'll be brief. When I think of career everywhere, Meredith, I think about the fact that career connections are made everywhere in the everyday encounters. And what I'll say to students is, while you're a student for 4 years at your university at Stanford, you're an alum for life. And there are 245,000 alumni all over the world who are actively making connections daily. Those could be social connections. They don't necessarily need to be career, but they could evolve into a career contact later. So really, it's just that message of you're connected to this great alumni community for life. And that's really how I think about Career Everywhere, is that it's in the everyday conversations.
I love that. James, how about you?
So I'm going to build a little bit on what Han said. And I view Career Everywhere as an opportunity to reframe. And what I mean by that is it goes from being one place on campus to every space where student learning occurs. And I think that's so important because regardless of if it's a classroom or if it's a space where student orgs are meeting, they're all thinking about their futures, and career is all about futures. So I love the concept of Career Everywhere.
Yeah, well said, both of you. I think I totally agree. Obviously, it's about getting career beyond the walls of the Career Center and really engaging the entire ecosystem, which I think is a nice segue into our topic today, which is again how you all support alumni career development through the Stanford PlusFive program. So, to get us started, can you just walk me through what the PlusFive program is and what it entails?
Sure. Stan, I'll start off with the career piece. So Stanford Career Education works in collaboration with Stanford Alumni Association. And what Stanford Career Education provides is the opportunity for recent alumni to meet for career coaching appointments. There's no limits on the number of appointments they can have. They explore a variety of topics that occur as we come out of college and transition into career, and look at issues that we really didn't think about when we were an undergraduate or pursuing a degree that come up in the workplace when we start to understand that this career I've chosen to pursue is now my life and I need support to figure it out. So career coaching is the part that we contribute.
Great. And thank you, James. And this is really an incredible partnership. If you think about James's team does the career education, all that incredible work of thinking through, like, where am I? What's my next step? And then really the Alumni Association partners with Career Ed on the connection piece. And so we offer career pathways panels, networking events. We have regional events. We have resources like our alumni directory and Stanford alumni groups. So a combination of just offering events that augment the career education with that alumni perspective, offering events where recent graduates can meet and network with alums. Those could be social or career focused, and then resources where they can just continue to explore how to make those connections individually through the directory or at other events with Stanford alumni groups.
Okay, and this is all up to 5 years, correct?
Yes, up to 5 years. By the way, just a footnote, we would never refuse anyone's service. So people can contact us.
Yeah.
And Meredith, what I will say is the connection resources are available to any alum for the rest of their life. So while our focus in this program, like the career pathways panels and the networking events, have been tailored to PlusFive, the connection events are open to all alumni.
Okay, so I'm curious, how do you go about like advertising these services to alumni who are, out and about and, trying to get their careers off the ground and busy? I'm just curious how you kind of get their attention.
Absolutely. So SAA has a careers newsletter, and we have a recent graduate version that focuses on resources for that PlusFive population. And that's where we advertise the PlusFive career coaching. And then we also have a Stanford Where You Live newsletter, which is a regionally based newsletter that lists all of our events, like an event digest. And so we will cross-reference any of the events that are career related in that newsletter. And that way, recent grads, if they're, they might see the careers newsletter, or if they're more socially oriented, they may just be looking at that regional newsletter with all those social events. And we have a career section that's part of it that promotes those opportunities.
Okay, very cool. I'm curious, you were kind of talking about some of the unique needs that recent grads and alumni have when it comes to career coaching. What are some of the common topics or questions or issues that you all are getting and helping to address?
Yeah. So what happens during that career transition is I think people often ask the question of, did I make the right choice? And then how do I manage this thing called a career? And so as we are advancing our work with PlusFive, we're actually right now, the person who serves as the lead career coach for this effort is working with all the other career coaches in our department to say, what are the topics that are coming up that are challenging for you? And how might we work together to make sure that we resolve those? I just want to pause and mention that 2 years ago, under a different lead career coach, we did a summer reading called The Defining Decade. And what we looked at was what happens to people in those 10 years between 20 and 30, and how might that inform the work that we're doing with recent alumni to really show them we understand where you are, we've got a grasp of the challenges, and we're here to support you. So that's the way that the topics, how we unearth the topics and how we think about supporting them from the career coaching perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine even just thinking back to my own experience, that's an interesting time, 20 to 30, trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, with your career. Like you said, James, figuring out if I made the right choice. Yep, it's intimidating for sure. So I would love to hear more about kind of the why here. Why did you start the PlusFive program, and what were some of those early signals to you that this was needed?
Well, can I give a little bit of context? I think this is really kind of cool. So Thien was one of the co-chairs for the committee that hired me. We didn't know each other before the experience, but I was so thrilled when I learned that the co-chair was from Stanford Alumni Association, because in my previous roles, I'd always made it a priority to get to meet people. And I kept thinking to myself, I need to meet somebody from the Alumni Association. So Thien shows up. As we were looking at doing this, and I was talking to the career ed team, and Thien can easily speak to what she was doing on her side. I talked about this earlier, but I said to the team, I think we need to show people as they graduate that we see them, that we understand their challenges, and that we're here to support them. And I think +5, because that's such a defining time in people's lives, is really going to answer that challenge. And Thien was part of the group that lifted it up in terms of the work that we did when we first launched it. But Thien, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not.
And thank you, James. At the same time, we were interviewing James, and we're so lucky to have him here at Stanford. The Alumni Association was actually doing a strategy looking at how might we provide better career support. And we found a couple things, which is a couple of our Ivy Plus peers were providing support up to 5 years out. We were also getting inquiries at the Alumni Association from recent grads who were really looking at that sort of 18-month to 24-month pivot, right? Like, I'm out in the world, and as James said, oops, is this really what I want to do? And that was sort of a natural inflection point. And so really it was through our joint partnership that we said, why not pilot this, which we did in 2021. We ran a 6-month pilot just to learn, like, will recent grads respond to this? What will resonate with them? And after that 6-month pilot, it was a resounding yes. And we continued to build the program.
Wow, that's great that you had such a good positive reaction to that pilot program. And I was even just thinking, again, referencing my own experience, I made my pivot from journalism to marketing less than a year or after graduation. So it was pretty clear to me that a change was needed. So I should have gone back to my career center at U of I.
You could have done what color's your parachute?
Yes, I should have done that. I don't know the color of my parachute, so. Okay, so earlier you both kind of mentioned, what's included in the +5 program, but I would love to hear more about how you facilitate it. And more specifically, how do the career education and alumni teams collaborate on +5?
Yeah. So I'll do it from kind of logistics perspective. We as a team, so it's Thien and the person who reports to her that works on their efforts, and then myself and the lead coach for +5, we all meet together on an ongoing basis. But then the two folks that report to us also meet, I believe, on a weekly basis. And then I meet with the lead career coach on a weekly basis. And so there's lots of interaction going on. And then we work together on an annual report. And so there's constant interactions. And I think the other thing that happens in Thien's area is really great about this with their newsletters. The person who works on contributing content always reaches out to us and says, hey, here's what I'm thinking about including. Do you have anything you want to add? It's a really good reality check. Thien, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, thank you, James. I'm so grateful for the collaboration. And early on, when we were looking at doing our first winter series of career panels and networking events, and these are virtually held, and that's a good time to connect +5, sort of that January, New Year, winter timeframe. We said, well, what industries are you hearing that young alums might be interested in? So we would collaborate on what themes and what industries might resonate with recent grads. And so that led to the first set of industry panels and networking events. Since then, in addition to the person I have, we have a full-time person at the Alumni Association who oversees our global industry groups. And there are 28 industry groups that are led by our alumni volunteers. And that's really how we scale connection, is by these alumni-led industry groups in sustainability and entrepreneurship and healthcare and public service, because then they organize events with their members and can offer them globally all around the world.
Okay, so those are networking groups of alumni in a specific industry area, and they just meet regularly?
They do. And in addition to that,
Cool.
yeah, we have regional groups, we have identity-based groups. The Alumni Association has over 200 volunteer-led alumni groups. And our goal is really to allow alumni to affiliate by the relationship that's meaningful to them. And so it could be where they live, it could be based on their identity, it could be based on their profession. And what we know is most alumni affiliate in multiple ways and are members of multiple groups and communities.
That's so cool. This is also making me think I need to go and check out if Idaho has that. I want to join one. So in our, kind of speaking of this collaboration, I think in our prep call, you both mentioned that there's like a 0.5 FTE from both of your teams that focus on this PlusFive program. Is that correct?
Yes, for our center it is.
Okay. I'm curious. So what does that look like? How did you decide on the 0.5 from each department?
So for anybody who's into strategy, one of the things that I looked at when I first came in, so I've been here 4.5 years, was I started to see people changing careers. It was in the midst of the Great Resignation. And I was saying to my supervisor, I think there's an opportunity here to repurpose one of the FTEs into a 0.5 FTE to support alumni. And just a quick note, student affairs sometimes doesn't work with alumni. And so it becomes more of a conversation of here's why it's important. And that's what the conversation we had. And thankfully, my then supervisor was in complete support of it. She said, James, I trust you. Go ahead and run with it. And the rest is history.
So at the Alumni Association, we were actually doing a young alumni strategy. And one of the insights we had is that young alums want to make career connections. And so that lent us to hiring a 0.5 FTE that partners now with James to really think about how do we get the word out about all these amazing connection opportunities, whether it's through the industry groups or whether it's through our SA-led events. And so that's how it came to be.
Okay. Yeah, that's great to hear. I think it's helpful to kind of hear some of those tactical things you all are doing for the folks who are watching or listening who may want to do something similar. Also in our prep call, James, I think you mentioned that you brought up alumni career support in your interview process.
I did.
I would love to hear that story. I want to make sure our listeners hear that too.
Yeah, I'm saying humorously that I asked in the interview was, how long do we support alumni as a career center? And the answer was a year. And I said, I'm just kind of curious as to why that is, because I think the message we could inadvertently send is that we're not here to support you when you need us most. And so the team was really gracious in hearing me out and talking about why I thought we should do it for longer. Putting myself in their positions, I think what they're seeing and maybe more work, but looking at it strategically from building affiliation with alumni who later become employers is very, very important. And so, yeah, it was one of those things where I probably didn't say it in the most diplomatic of ways. It wasn't the most polished. However, I think it needed to be heard. And I do think it set the groundwork for people understanding that that was a priority for me coming in as a leader. Does that help in terms of what your recollection was?
Yeah, for sure. I also just love that story because I think it's a good example. It's always a risk to bring up a critique in an interview, but I think it kind of helped you, as you said, lay that foundation and set expectations for what your priorities would be and what resources you would need. And clearly it has worked out well for you.
Yeah.
And I would love to kind of dig into that concept of supporting alumni with career development just a little bit more. From both of your perspectives, why is it so important to support alumni with career development, especially, again, in those first 5 or so years?
When students come to Stanford, right, it's a very defining time and they are discovering who they are, they're exploring, and there's a certain amount of trust, right, that comes with being at the institution. And what we heard, and I'll speak to recent grads and James can elaborate on the student piece, is that when we were getting those inquiries from recent grads, it was just a natural place that they would want to turn. They learn to trust this institution to help them figure out their life phase and they get out into the world. And their inclination was to come back and say, well, you helped me as a student. Can you actually help me now as an alum?
Yeah. And I think to add to that, Fan, at a place like Stanford, and please know I'm not saying this in any way that's dismissive of any other place, but there are so many opportunities and students go through their experiences in quarters, which is very different than the semester. And they're often so impacted and so engaged with their peers that career comes up maybe in conversations around internships and how many they've done, but not in a way where they're going to dedicate time to coming to the Career Center, especially what we find is weeks 6 through 10 when we see the traffic slow down. So I think the idea of being there for them as they make that first year, especially if they don't have the answer to what are you doing next, like they might be taking a gap 6 months or a gap year, and then they come back and they're expected to have an answer. And they're really not even sure what the question is that they want to answer with regard to career. And so I think that's where we come in provide that safe space for them to have those conversations and to really start to understand what it means to make choices in one's career and how they develop and move forward on a life path.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In addition to, of course, helping your recent grads and alumni, take flight and have successful lives and careers, I have to imagine that having this +5 program has probably also been a boon for enrollment or can help in that process as you're talking to prospective students and families. Have you found that to be the case?
Well, I was going to say, in Thean, I sometimes wonder if Thean was like, why did I ever meet this person? Whenever I get an opportunity to speak, I always say, oh, Thean, could you join me? And we speak at Family Weekend. We speak at Admit Weekend. Those are two that come top of mind. And I do think that it's really important for parents to hear, due to the synergies between our two areas, your students are supported as they go through Stanford and as they transition out from college to career. I think it's a huge message. Those are my initial thoughts. Stan, did you have anything you want to add?
No, James, except for thank you for always including me. I'm always delighted to present with you.
Yeah, it's very clear that you two are super aligned, both on the +5 and it sounds like outside of that too. And I am curious, are there any other ways that you wanted to highlight that your teams do collaborate outside of the +5 program?
Yeah, I'd love to highlight one. There are many, but just one recent example I'll give is, so as I mentioned, the Alumni Association has been building out these industry groups across every major sector. And the reason we're doing that is really to create social capital, because many students come into college and they may not have the networks to support them in the area of what they want to pursue. And so now that we've built them out across these major sectors, last year we piloted summer networking mixers, where we invited our professional groups to organize a summer mixer. We had it on a landing page. There were 9 that were held all throughout the world. And we went to career and said, we probably should stand up some resources on this page to help with that. Like, what do I do when I arrive? What questions do I ask? How do I prepare? And so our teams worked together to think about, well, what are the resources we need to stand up on the resources page? So you would see the events, and at the bottom, you had various resources. And so we just worked together to really have a resource page, not only for students, but also for alumni showing up. And just, here are some thought starter questions. Here are some ways that you might enter the conversation, think about these things. And then in addition, we actually used those prompts and engaged our professional groups and said, think about how you can do icebreakers at these sessions so that when recent grads or students or alums come in, that you're facilitating connection and really kind of overcoming that perhaps reluctance somebody might feel that might be more introverted in arriving at the event.
I'll add one. I find that we often involve each other with pilot projects. So there was an alumni weekend that happened this past year, and I was so thrilled for us to be a part of it because I got a chance to meet, and sort of the team members who were there with me, it was a Saturday and it was really well attended. And I got a chance to meet a bunch of alumni who actually were more like, I would say 7 to 12 years out and had lots of questions. And I said to them what I said earlier, which is, please, and I gave them my card and said, just contact me. We'll make sure that we support you. I got to see how once you advance into that 7, let's say to 12, 15-year mark, the differences in the career choices you're making and just even the conversations I had there. So that's another example of, I would call piloting, where Dan will say, hey, we're having this. And I'll be like, yeah, count us in. We're going to absolutely be there.
Yeah, that's great. And also, Thean, I love the ideas of including some of those icebreaker or questions or suggestions for networking events, because I just remember, especially as a younger professional, going to networking events and just being totally unsure how to approach people, if it was appropriate to approach people, if someone was in a conversation, do I interject? Do I? So I have like vivid memories of just standing awkwardly at networking events. So that's really smart. So now that the +5 program is about 4 years old, correct? It is 4 years old.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what kind of outcomes or results, both quantitative and qualitative, have you seen so far?
So I'll speak to a little bit of the qualitative in terms of career coaching appointments. We've worked every year since the academic year 21, 22, and then 22, 23, 23, 24, and now we're doing 24, 25. So I just looked at some of the numbers. So when we started with regard to career coaching appointments in the academic year 2021 to 2022, we had 410 appointments. This past academic year, from 2023 to 2024, 647, and that's a 57% jump. A spoiler alert is, I think for this current academic year will exceed 800. So you can see that the demand is clearly there. I think the other thing is I mentioned this earlier, we really do see people where they are. And I think that word of mouth or people talking about this is a testament to that, where they see that we're willing to really pause and listen to them and work with them in terms of career coaching to advance their careers. So that's just kind of a snapshot in terms of career coaching appointment.
Wow, that's a very significant jump. I'll be anxious to hear what the numbers end up being. Anything to add, Thean?
Yes. And on the connection side, when we did the pilot, it was a 6-month pilot and we had a couple hundred recent grads engage in our connection events. And then fast forward to this past academic year, where we had over 1,100 recent grads actively making connections through our events. And I just have to thank our alumni communities team, because that's our sort of global communities team. They host welcome to events in the fall, and those are extremely popular with recent grads. So that's an example of, it's a social event, but they're coming together and making those connections. And we see over 50% of those events, the participants are recent graduates. In the spring, they organize industry-based networking meetups. And again, about a third of the participants are recent grads. And then, as I mentioned, the summer industry mixers, we have about a third being those recent grads. So what we're seeing is that it started small. And as recent grads are becoming aware of these programs and they're repeating year over year, that it is a space for making connection.
Yeah, that's great that you've become such a popular resource for your alumni and that they feel like they can depend on you even long after they've graduated. I'm curious, James, with the career coaching appointments, are those largely virtual or do you get alumni coming into your office? Hey, friend, if you're enjoying this podcast, I think you'd really like our Career Everywhere conference coming up on July 29th and 30th in Boston. This day-and-a-half conference will feature innovative career leaders from all over the country, sharing how they're implementing Career Everywhere on their campuses. You'll walk away with actionable insights and strategies about how to make career services accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I'll be there, so we can hang out. I'm not sure if that's a selling point or not, but still, I would love to see you there. And as a thank you for listening to the podcast, you can use the code PODCAST at checkout to get $50 off your registration. That's PODCAST. Learn more at careereverywhere.com/Boston.
Excellent question. We use Handshake, and I'm sure many career centers do, so we can parse that out. I would say that in excess of 95% are virtual. And I'm so thrilled that we can offer that with regard to Zoom-based meetings and tracking it in Handshake, because most alumni don't probably want to come back to campus and try and work through traffic during the ongoing quarter, as it were. And so the fact that, yes, the majority are virtual, and it really does suit their working needs. So we have the flexibility to meet them if they need to after hours. It works out really well. We definitely have people who come in and use us in person. They usually come over to the Career Center, or we go over to a place called Munger Hall, which is near us, where they can sit outside and chat. But yeah, the majority are virtual.
Okay. I kind of assumed, but I'm always curious to hear what that breakdown looks like. So, looking ahead, what is your vision for the PlusFive program? Are there any plans to extend the support, even further beyond 5 years? I know you mentioned that, of course, you're not going to turn anyone away, but I'm just curious what the future vision is.
So I'm going to hark back to the flower that I created and how ambitious I was with getting that done. I think the person was surprised because I did it in less than 2 weeks. And I find that when I work with my supervisors, they often have that same experience where I've talked to Thean about this, and this may have been actually a title you invented, Thean, not me, was we could have +5 and 5+. And I need to get the FTE and the infrastructure to support it. But as I mentioned earlier at that event that I went to, I see a real need for life, by the way, and I'm so thrilled that Stanford Alumni Association offers things for life, but I do see a real need, especially with the way the economy can go, to look at, 5+, because you never know when something's going to happen that causes a change in a labor market. And we need people to be able to come in and talk to us about their experience with that and how they work their way through it.
And James, I'll add to that on the connection side. Again, I mentioned how we do our work is through our alumni volunteers. And while we have our professional communities, I think really talking with them about how to engage the +5 population and increasing sort of the events and pathway panels that they offer, so that instead of maybe having 3 every winter, we have 1 across every industry every winter, right? And many of them offer them throughout the year. So I think engaging our current volunteers and continuing to engage other alumni volunteers, because somebody may not be part of a community, but they might be a connector, right? So as we think about how do I engage that alum, I met with one yesterday who is affiliated with athletics. He is a connector. He's like, look, I like connecting dots. I like connecting people. How can I best serve Stanford in this role? So it's thinking about how do we really kind of activate that community of connectors outside of the communities that we already have to help those recent graduates with their transitions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it sounds like there's so many different ways that you're engaging alumni and really getting them connected, getting them bought in, and just building a ton of affinity with them in terms of helping, recent grads. But I imagine that also plays, I'm sure advancement loves that too.
Yes.
James, I wanted to go back to something you said as well, kind of looking at the +5, and then I think you called it 5+. So in your mind, what are some of those differences you anticipate in terms of supporting grads up to 5 years and then maybe those beyond 5 years in terms of their career development?
Yeah, I think the biggest split between the two is with +5, it's really trying to understand what are the core career decisions that I'm making. Like, I thought I wanted to go into management consulting, but look, I've been a management consultant and I understand the impact it has on my life. I'm just using that as an example. It could be any industry. I think what happens with 5+ is my identity has now been developed around an occupation or an industry. And if I see either that industry going away, an industry shift, I'm just finishing up a book chapter for a career coaching book. And my part is labor market shelters. When those shift and people lose jobs, it's a really defining moment because it's now ingrained in me enough. Maybe I've been in it a decade to see that I need to really figure this out with someone. And I need to have a safe space to do that because I need to plan next steps because it's more than just me. It may be my spouse. It may be, the fact that I have a house. There's so many things tied up in it. So I think it moves along the trajectory in a different way than I see +5 happening.
Yes, that's great. I am always interested to hear how career coaches kind of think through those different life changes and phases in addition to the career phases.
And Meredith, I'll add, so SAA actually works with alumni career coaches. So we have alumni who are career coaches. And so right now, to provide career support to the 5+, we engage our alumni career coaches to offer workshops. And we do these quarterly where we'll have anywhere from probably 6 to 8 workshops in fall, winter, and spring, led by alumni career coaches that are sharing their expertise. And it could range from how do I get from the interview to the job? How do I hire better? And so they are leveraging kind of their expertise and what they're hearing from their coaching practices and then bringing that to offer to alumni.
Okay, that's really cool. So how does one become a career coach? Do you reach out to them? They reach out to you? I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah, great question. So they tend to find us, right? Because they reach out and say, hey, I'd love to offer support to alumni. So we make sure that they're certified, right? They've been in practice for at least 3 years. Because what we found is a lot of people can say, hey, I want to be a coach, but we want to make sure that the advice is really grounded in that practice of career coaching. So we have those requirements. And then we have a web page that lists the alumni career coaches, and then they offer the workshops for free to alumni.
Okay, so they go through some training then.
On their own. They have to come in, they have to show that they're a certified career coach and that they've had a practice for 3 years that they've sustained.
Okay, that's really cool. Nice. Cool. Was there anything else either of you would like to add about the vision, the future, what you think the program will look like?
I think there's a real need for it. And I'm really looking forward to making that case. And I do that with the understanding that career lives in two worlds. It lives in the student experience world of student affairs, but it also lives in the world of career that are explored and developed outside when people become alumni. And we're thrilled to have alumni give back and that we are a part of helping them learn how to do that.
Yeah. It seems really smart to me that you're all building this foundation now. As James mentioned earlier, that the labor market can change at any time. Industries change at any time. I'm sure integration of AI is going to change a lot of jobs as we know it. So it seems like it's great that you have this foundation for supporting alumni now so that they know when things change, they can always go back to Stanford.
Absolutely.
And Meredith, I'll add to that in addition to the groups that I'd mentioned, we have our Stanford Alumni Directory. And there's a section in there where alumni can raise their hand and say, I'm willing to offer career support. And I'll just highlight one change we're making right now, just in response to the national environment is we got a request from the Graduate School of Business because they have a lot of international students. And they said, we need to somehow identify alumni who are willing to support international students. So we're adding a filter in our directory that is, I'm willing to help and support international students, so that whether I'm an international alum or I have an international expertise or I just want to help international students, I can indicate that. So we encourage our alumni to come back to the alumni directory, update their information, show how they want to get involved. And that way we can activate that in support of programs like PlusFive.
Yeah, that's really smart. Allows you to stay agile and kind of respond to current events as they are. So, based on what you've both learned throughout this process of launching and growing the PlusFive program over the last 4 years, what advice would you give to other career services leaders or other career leaders in alumni who want to expand support for alumni?
I think it's so vital to the functioning of a career center on campus to be connected to alumni, their alumni associations. If they don't have that connection, I think that they disadvantage themselves to do things like a PlusFive program. And just as importantly, to engage alumni at things like career fairs and networking events and panels that you offer. And I think that what we do really well in terms of the work that I'm experiencing with the Inn and the Stanford Alumni Association is we inform each other, let each other know what's coming up, what are some opportunities, where can we co-present, where can we cooperate in terms of offering programs. It's just such a learning experience. And again, because careers reach into the student experience and out to the alumni experience, that second piece needs to be there. I think I can't say enough about if you want to initiate some sort of a program, you've got to have those partners, and those partners live in the Alumni Association.
James, I would absolutely plus one the partnership. I think the strength of our partnership has really helped not just PlusFive, but also students. And I think has helped us just have better offerings overall. So thank you. I think in terms of what advice I would give is I would encourage any alumni association or career center to activate the alumni network and to lean into the alumni volunteers, because that's how you scale, right? Alumni associations and career centers are thinly resourced. We've got 245,000 alumni all over the world. How do we reach those alumni? Well, it's through our amazing alumni volunteers. And I sort of have become an evangelist. Well, I'll meet with alumni and I'll kind of find out, well, what are you interested in? And I was talking with one alum at our Democracy Day event. It was a student event 2 years ago, and he was a recent grad, and I was just sharing what I was doing. Well, fast forward a year later, he was like, hey, can I start a group in climate tech? I'm like, of course you can. And literally within 9 months, and he's a recent graduate. So he's a case of, he's a PlusFiver who wants to help others. So he created this amazing community with another recent grad. They've had 9 events in 9 months, both regional mixers. They've been at San Francisco Climate Week. They're going to be at New York Climate Week. They've held a career panel on campus. They've held a job fair on campus. So just tapping into that alumni energy and allowing them to bring their energy, their drive, their ambition to help support recent grads and students is a win, not only for the alum, but for all the students, alumni in Stanford.
Yeah, and you're giving them a ton of options for getting involved. Like they have a whole buffet to choose from. So that's really cool. That's a great story. I kind of on this note, I'm curious. Let's say we have someone watching or listening and they're in career services, they want to partner with alumni, but there's often those walls and those silos. I guess, what advice would you give to them about something like a first step they can take to building that partnership, to making a compelling case for a partnership? I just would love your perspectives on that.
I have an initial one, which is if you have a search going on and it would make sense to include someone from that area, like they did for my search, to approach them and say, hey, what about a search? And or probably an even easier one is you're getting ready to do a panel and you want to make sure alumni are on it. Reach out to the Alumni Association and say, do you have a list of contacts with whom we could work for this sort of panel? I think those are real easy wins and build partnerships, because my guess is if you invite the alumni that they've referred, they may show up. They being the folks from the Alumni Association would want to show up to meet them to make sure that they were welcome to campus. Those are my first 2 thoughts. Dan, anything you want to add?
I love that, James. I think I would add, and I think you mentioned this earlier, which is if you have an opportunity to present to parents or to admits, ask your alumni association rep to join you and have them talk about their resources. And I think one of the things that James and I really try to do is create the bridge from student into alumnihood and really talk about how we create that bridge with intention. And so just a simple act of just inviting or just having the Alumni Association table, let's say at an event. And we do a lot of joint tabling. James was at our student awards event that we had not too long ago, talking with students about resources and way to give back as a mentor. So I think just really inclusion and thinking about, okay, how might I incorporate these campus partners and career education into the work that I do?
Okay. Yeah, those are both great pieces of advice. And Theanne, I'm glad you mentioned the word intention, because that's like the theme I'm seeing with this conversation with you too, is that you approach it with intentionality. It's not just a partnership that just happened. Like you have both made it happen. You've continued to foster that partnership. And clearly it is working out very well for you and for your students and alumni. So I do want to be mindful of our time here. So I'll kind of start wrapping this up. But before I do, is there anything else either of you would like to add?
I wanted to add, because Stan started with gratitude for me, and I wanted to add gratitude to her. I just wanted to mention that some of the things that she embodies that I'm so thankful for are the commitment. There's such a commitment to working together. There's also due diligence. I really love the way that when Thea and I are meeting, she'll ask questions and pull in concepts or things that have happened that we can think about. Also, that with regard to networking, she's always there in terms of networking and making sure that people feel seen. And I wanted to reemphasize, always shows up. That's so important. You can't do this work and do it well if someone is there sometimes. You have to always be there. And Theanne, thank you. You're always there. I'm so grateful.
James, thank you. I'm a little overwhelmed at the moment. That was very, very
So
gracious
sweet.
of you. And I want to thank you for being an incredible thought partner. You have an ability to ask questions and really advance whatever topic we have in a strategic way and bring your depth of expertise in career education to every conversation. And I find that I learn and grow in every conversation with you. And it's just a delight and pleasure to advance our mutual work together.
Oh, that was so sweet. You guys are the best. See, this is why the partnership works. Cool. Well, James and Theanne, if people would like to connect with you or learn more from you, where is a good place for them to do that?
I prefer email. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn and anybody can reach out to me there. But in case you don't include my email address, it's jtarbox5 at Stanford. And 5 is because I'm the fifth child of 8. So that's why I chose 5.
Okay.
And same with me. LinkedIn is fine. You can also find me at Stanford, and it's just my first name, Theanne at stanford.edu.
Okay, perfect. And for those of you who are watching or listening, I'll be sure to include links to James and Theanne's LinkedIn profiles and their emails in the show notes so you can reach out to them if you'd like to. All right, so I like to wrap us up with every episode with an answer a question, leave a question thing. So I'll ask you a question our last guest left for you, and then you will leave a question for the next guest. So our last guest was Danny Pape of Washington University in St. Louis, and he left this question for you. What's a guilty pleasure TV show that you watch that might surprise people?
I would say White Lotus.
It's a good one.
I didn't think I would like it after I read things about it, but then I started watching it. I thought, oh my gosh, and I really find myself wanting to watch it. Yeah.
I love it. That's great, James. And for me, I cannot wait. The Bear season 4 is dropping soon. I love food and community and bringing people together. And that show just hits all those points. So I don't want to run a restaurant though, after watching it. It was very clear. I don't want to run a restaurant, but I love the themes of food and community.
Yes, chef. Yes. I love that. I have not seen the latest season of White Lotus or The Bear, so I'm behind. I think I said when I had this conversation with Danny, I think I said my guilty pleasure TV show was The Walking Dead.
Oh.
That might surprise people. Okay. Well, what questions would you like to leave for the next guest? I think I saw that you both have one.
Yeah, do you want to start?
Sure. I think lately I've really just been trying to lean into gratitude and joy. So my question is simple, which is, what is a hobby or activity that fills you with joy that you like to share with others or do with other people?
Oh, that's
a good one. What would your answer be to that, Theanne?
Enjoying the outdoors. It would be hiking, rowing, sailing, just any activity. If you want to go outdoors, I'll be there. Skiing, I'm there.
Love that. All right, James, what's your question?
Because I love writing, I'd ask you, if a play were to be written about your life, what would the 3-word title of that play be and why?
Ooh. Do you know what yours would be?
I do. It's my purpose in life, which is making a difference. So the title would be Making a Difference. And because it aligns with my purpose, I feel like that's a fitting title for that play. And I did want to mention, I also thought with the Tonys just having occurred, it could become a Broadway musical, not mine, but somebody else's.
Oh, I love that. I'm not sure what my 3-word title would be. Theanne, do you know yours?
No, I was thinking about it.
Mm.
I think I've been talking about the gratitude might be in there somewhere, but I also, James knows, something about impact and difference is definitely part of my themes as well. So I have to work on it.
It could be Gratitude, the musical. I love that. Those are both great questions, and I will be sure to post those to the next guest. All right. Well, thank you both for joining me on the podcast today. This is just a fun conversation with lots of great advice and information about how you all are supporting alumni with their career development. So just thank you again for sharing your time and your wisdom today.
Thank you.
Meredith, it's been a real pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much.
That's all for this episode of Career Everywhere. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit subscribe and rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time.